When Genesis first announced they were making a coupe version of the GV80, I'll be honest, I had the same reaction a lot of you probably did. Another four-door coupe SUV? Really? We're doing this again? But here's the thing about the GV80 Coupe that genuinely surprised me after spending a week with this $90,000 Prestige Black Edition. Genesis isn't just copying the Germans anymore. They're actually challenging them where it matters. And in some ways, they might be doing it better. So we're taking this thing on a proper road trip from Michigan to Chicago, loading it up with weekend gear, putting it through real-world conditions, and seeing if this Korean luxury crossover can hang with the X6s and Cayenne Coupes of the world. Let's find out what it's actually like to live with a Genesis GV80 Coupe. So this is the Prestige Black trim, which is the absolute top of the range for the GV80 Coupe. That means everything you see here, the grille, the badges, the 22-inch wheels, the accents, it's all murdered out in black. The paint is this deep metallic black that honestly looks incredible when it's clean, which lasted about 45 minutes after I picked it up. As equipped, we're looking at right around $90,000, which puts it squarely against a BMW X6 M50i, a Porsche Cayenne Coupe, or a Mercedes-AMG GLE 53 Coupe. That's serious company, and Genesis knows it. Now, I want to address the elephant in the room right up front. Yes, the four-door coupe SUV is a ridiculous concept. BMW started this whole thing with the X6, and we can absolutely blame the Germans for convincing the market that trading practicality for a sloping roofline makes sense. But if we're being honest, these things sell. People want the commanding driving position of an SUV with the visual drama of a coupe, even if it means sacrificing rear headroom and cargo space. The question isn't whether this segment should exist, it's whether Genesis can execute it well enough to justify that $90,000 price tag. Before we get into the road trip stuff, I want to show you one of those features that sounds gimmicky until you actually use it. Genesis calls it Remote Smart Parking Assistant, and it lets you move the car forward or backward using the key fob. I know what you're thinking, that's a party trick. But check this out. I've got my Corvette Z06 parked on the other side of the driveway, and I need to move the GV80 back to get the Corvette into the garage. I really don't feel like getting in, starting it, backing it up, getting out, so I'm going to remote start it using the key fob. There it goes, engine fires up. Now there are two buttons, one for forward, one for reverse. I'm going to press and hold the reverse button, and the car just starts backing itself up. I'm literally walking alongside it right now. This is genuinely trusting the system because I've got a $120,000 Z06 sitting right there, but the GV80 sensors are tracking everything. The use case for this is when you're in a really tight parking garage, or you've squeezed into a spot that's right up against a wall and you can't physically open the door. You just back it out with the fob, hop in, and drive away. Or for my case, I'm being completely lazy and using it because I don't want to get in the car for a 30-second move, but it works flawlessly. Park it, lock it, done. Now let's load this thing up for Chicago. All right, road trip time. Let's see if the GV80 Coupe's sloping roofline compromises too much on practicality. We've got two people, my wife Angel and I, heading to Chicago for the weekend, my younger brother's engagement party, so we're packing for a couple nights in the city. One thing I immediately noticed is the cargo cover. Instead of the typical fabric rolling cover that slides forward, Genesis uses this three-fold suede-lined hardcover. It feels way more premium and substantial. When you fold it, it just collapses down instead of having to wrestle with a floppy piece of fabric. Small detail, but it's nicer to use. Now, how much cargo space do you actually lose with the coupe roofline? The answer is honestly not as much as I expected. We've got two full suitcases, a duffel bag, a backpack, shoes, snacks, drinks, all the random stuff you accumulate for a weekend trip. The second row is still up, so you could put adults back there if needed, although we'll talk about headroom in a minute. But for two people, this is more than enough space. You could definitely Tetris some more stuff in here if you needed to. The real compromise is rear headroom, not cargo capacity. All right, loaded up, let's hit the road. 4-hour drive from Michigan to Chicago, so plenty of time to get familiar with this thing. We took a Toyota Sequoia Capstone on this exact same route last weekend, which was comfortable, but very much a body-on-frame truck. The GV80 Coupe is unibody, so the ride quality is immediately different. Smoother, quieter, more car-like. Angel's already noticed it. The powertrain in this Prestige Black trim is a 3.5-liter twin-turbo V6 making 425 horsepower and 391 pound-feet of torque. It routes through an 8-speed automatic to all wheels. On paper, those numbers are solid. 0 to 60 happens in about 5.3 seconds, which is respectable for a 5,000-pound luxury crossover. In real-world driving, though, there's a bit of laziness to the throttle response in the normal drive mode. You tip into the accelerator expecting immediate torque, and there's just a slight hesitation before it wakes up and delivers power. It's not slow by any means, but compared to the immediate punch you get from a German twin-turbo 6 or the electric shove of something like a Model X, there's a noticeable lag. Now, I didn't spend much time in the sportier drive modes on this trip because highway cruising doesn't really demand it, but I'd imagine Sport or Sport Plus would sharpen up the throttle mapping and transmission behavior significantly. What I really want to see from Genesis, though, is a proper performance variant. They've got Magma now, their new performance sub-brand. They're going endurance racing, they're doing a hypercar project. Throw a twin-turbo V8 in this thing and go after the X6M competition or the Cayenne Turbo. Genesis has the engineering talent. Let's see them push into that space. One thing I'm immediately appreciating on this highway stretch is the Highway Driving Assist system. It's Genesis's semi-autonomous driving suite. You've got adaptive cruise control, lane centering, and it'll even handle lane changes if you signal and check your blind spot. The system works really well. The steering inputs are smooth, not jerky, it doesn't ping-pong between the lane lines like some older systems, and the little display in the digital cluster shows you exactly what the car is seeing, which gives you confidence that it's tracking properly. I've got the Ergo Motion massage seat turned on right now, which is a driver-only feature unfortunately. Angel doesn't get one on the passenger side, which seems like an odd omission for a $90,000 luxury vehicle, but I'm enjoying it. The seat heaters and coolers work great, and the overall seating position is commanding without being too truck-like. You sit lower than a Sequoia, but higher than a sedan. It's that crossover sweet spot. Fuel economy on the highway, I'm seeing low 20s MPGs with cruise set around 80 miles per hour. That's with 2 people, loaded cargo, and not trying to be efficient whatsoever. Around town later in Chicago, I saw a dip into the high teens, which is pretty typical for a luxury SUV with this much power. You do need to run premium fuel though, so factor in those fuel costs. This is a 375 horsepower twin-turbo V6. It's not gonna sip regular unleaded. Alright, we've arrived in downtown Chicago, checked into the Airbnb in the suburbs, and now we're heading into the city for my brother's engagement party. I want to talk about one practicality thing that Angel pointed out, and honestly, she's right. The cup holders and storage in this thing are weirdly inadequate for a vehicle this size and price. The center console is tiny. I've got 4 toll transponders in there and it's basically full. There's nowhere to put a phone, sunglasses case, wallet, any of the small stuff you accumulate on a road trip. The door pockets aren't deep enough for a large water bottle, and the center cup holders can fit 2 drinks, but if you've got a big Yeti tumbler and a large coffee, it's a tight squeeze. For a $90,000 luxury SUV, that's a miss. The Lincoln Navigator we drove a few weeks ago had cavernous storage everywhere. This feels cramped in comparison. Now, Angel drove the GV80 for a couple days while we were in Chicago, and she had some thoughts. Specifically, she mentioned the steering feels heavier than what she's used to. I daily drive a Porsche Macan, so I'm used to a lighter, more communicative electric Porsche steering setup. The Genesis has more weight to it, which some people might interpret as more premium or substantial, but it does require more effort, especially at low speeds or when parking. The other thing she mentioned, and this is interesting from a luxury perspective, is the screen size. Angel really liked the massive panoramic screen in the Lincoln Navigator we drove recently. That was a 48-inch display that stretched across the entire dash. The Genesis has a dual-screen setup, a digital instrument cluster and a separate infotainment screen, but they're smaller individual units. Total screen real estate is maybe 27 inches combined, depending on how you measure it. Here's where I push back a bit. Screen size doesn't equal luxury. The materials in this GV80 Coupe are genuinely top tier. This open-pore black wood trim across the dash and doors, the quilted Nappa leather, the suede headliner, the Bang & Olufsen sound system with those illuminated tweeters on the dash, the soft closed doors, the double-pane acoustic glass. This interior is beautifully executed. The build quality is better than some recent Mercedes or BMW interiors I've been in, which are full of shiny black plastic that fingerprints immediately and creaks over bumps. But Angel's point is about the initial impression when you first sit in the car. The Lincoln's giant screen is an immediate wow factor. The Genesis's interior reveals its quality over time. It's a more subtle approach, which I appreciate, but I understand why someone might prefer the immediate visual impact of a massive display. One thing we both agree on is the heads-up display is excellent. It's a full-color unit that displays speed, navigation, adaptive cruise control, and even turn-by-turn directions. The projection is crisp and easy to read in any lighting condition. That's a feature I genuinely miss when I switch back to a car that doesn't have it. The Bang & Olufsen sound system is legitimately good. We've been streaming music the entire trip, and the clarity and staging are impressive. It's not quite at the level of a Burmester system in a Porsche or a Lexus Mark Levinson, but it's in that conversation. Bass response is tight, mids are clear, highs aren't harsh. For listening on a road trip, it's more than sufficient. Isolation is another area where this thing excels. The double-paned windows, the active noise cancellation, the overall structural rigidity, it's a whisper quiet at highway speeds. We were cruising at 75–80 miles per hour on the interstate, and we could have a normal conversation without raising our voices. Wind noise is minimal, tire roar is well controlled, especially when we're on 22-inch wheels with relatively low-profile rubber. Ride quality is where the GV80 Coupe walks a fine line. It's on adaptive dampers, not air suspension, so it doesn't have that pillowy, floaty feel of something like an Audi Q8 or a Range Rover, but it's definitely more compliant than the Sequoia Capstone we drove last week. Bumps and imperfections are absorbed without being harsh, but you still feel connected to the road. It's a sporty luxury SUV setup rather than a pure comfort cruiser. Personally, I prefer this. It feels more controlled and planted, but if you want maximum isolation and that magic carpet ride, you'd be better served by something with air suspension. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is the wheel design. These are 22-inch black machined wheels and they look fantastic. But check this out. The Genesis logo center caps are weighted, so even when the wheel is spinning, the logo stays upright. It's a floating center cap, just like you'd see on a Rolls-Royce or a high-end Mercedes. It's a small detail, but it's exactly the kind of thing that signals Genesis is sweating the details to compete with the luxury establishment. We spent the weekend in Chicago doing typical city stuff. Went to an Orange Theory fitness class, which was my idea, and Angel did not want to wake up for it. We grabbed brunch with family, drove around downtown, went to the Shed Aquarium. The GV80 was a great city car. The 360-degree camera system makes tight parking garages easy to navigate. The remote smart parking feature, which I genuinely thought was a gimmick, actually came in handy multiple times when we were in cramped parking structures. I'd use the key fob to back the car out of the space, and we'd hop in without having to squeeze past other cars. One funny moment, we were downtown near the aquarium and a friend of mine saw the GV80 and legitimately thought it was a Bentley Bentayga. The big shield grille, the winged Genesis logo, the overall proportions, there's definitely a visual similarity. When the GV80 first launched a few years ago, there were stories of people trading in their Bentaygas for GV80s plus some cash. I can see why. The design language is confident and premium without being derivative. My youngest brother Oliver rode in the back seat with us at one point, and here's where the coupe roofline actually does make a difference. Headroom. Oliver is about 5'11", shortest in our family, and he was brushing the headliner. If you're over 6 feet tall, you're going to feel cramped back there. Legroom is fine, the seats are comfortable, but that swoopy roofline cuts into headroom significantly. If you regularly carry adult passengers in the second row, the regular GV80 is probably the better choice. If it's mostly just you or you and a partner with occasional rear passengers, the coupe is fine. All right, after an extended weekend in Chicago, it's time to head back to Michigan. Let's wrap up some final thoughts on what it's been like living with this thing. First, let's talk about price and value. At $90,000, the GV80 Coupe Prestige Black is expensive. There's no getting around that. But what are you getting for that money? A 375 horsepower twin-turbo V6, all-wheel drive, adaptive dampers, 22-inch wheels, quilted Nappa leather, open-pore wood trim, suede headliner, heads-up display, 360-degree cameras, remote smart parking, highway driving assist, Bang & Olufsen audio, heated and cooled massaging front seats, soft closed doors, panoramic sunroof, wireless charging, and a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. That warranty alone is a huge differentiator. BMW, Mercedes, Audi, they're all doing 4 years, 50,000 miles. Genesis doubles it. Now, does it compete directly with the Germans on driving dynamics? Not quite. The steering isn't as sharp as a BMW X6. The chassis isn't as playful as a Porsche Cayenne. The interior tech isn't as cutting-edge as a Mercedes GLE with MBUX. But here's the thing. It's close enough that most people won't care. And in some areas, like build quality, materials, and warranty, Genesis is actually ahead. The real question is brand perception. When I told my buddy Mikey this thing was $90,000, he was genuinely surprised. He thought it'd be in the $60,000, $70,000 range, because Genesis still has that value brand association in a lot of people's minds. And I think that's Genesis's biggest challenge right now. They've engineered and designed a product that can legitimately compete with BMW, Mercedes, and Audi, but public perception hasn't fully caught up yet. People are still surprised these cost as much as the Germans. Personally, I think Genesis is on the right track. They're not relying on the value proposition anymore. They're competing on design, quality, technology, and experience. And with Magma coming online, with their endurance racing program, and with rumors of a Halo supercar, the brand equity is building. Give it another 5 years, and I don't think people will blink at a $90,000 Genesis the same way they don't blink at a $90,000 Lexus now. Would I personally buy one? Here's my honest take. If I were cross-shopping luxury SUVs in this segment, and I wanted a coupe version, I'd seriously consider the GV80 Coupe. The interior is gorgeous, the ride quality is excellent, the tech works well, the warranty is unbeatable. But I'd probably skip the Prestige Black trim and save some money with the Advanced or Sport Prestige trims, which still get you most of the important features for $10,000 to $15,000 less, and I'd spec it in the mineral white metallic, because as much as this black looks incredible when it's clean, keeping it clean is a losing battle. The one thing I'd really want to see is a performance variant. Give me a Magma version with a twin-turbo V8, upgraded brakes, adaptive air suspension, staggered performance tires, and go after the X6M competition. Genesis has the capability. Let's see them do it. Overall, living with the Genesis GV80 Coupe for a week has been a genuinely pleasant experience. It's a well-executed luxury SUV that proves Genesis isn't just playing in the luxury space anymore. They're competing. And in a lot of ways, they're winning. If you're in the market for a luxury coupe SUV and you're willing to look past the badge on the hood, the GV80 Coupe deserves to be on your shortlist. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments, would you take the GV80 Coupe over an X6 or a Cayenne? And if you want to see more real-world road trip reviews like this, make sure you're subscribed. I'll see you in the next one.